I'm back with another video, and this is another installment of movies you should have watched. And in this segment, in this show, in this vid, we'll be talking about two of my favorite Paul Verhoeven masterpieces. And no, I'm not talking Total Recall, although that is a good movie, and I might do another movies you should have watched when I talk about it. No, I'm talking about Robocop 1 and 2. The reason I'm doing these movies is very simple. There's a new one coming out in February, and I think it's fair to say that now that they're making a remake of one of my favorite films of all time, it's only fair that I do a little back in the day movies you should have watched review. So here we go. Okay, this is the first part, and we'll be talking about Robocop 1. Now, this movie was directed by Paul Verhoeven. Paul Verhoeven was a mathematician by trade. Basically, he discovered the mathematical formula to make a blockbuster movie in the 80s. Okay? Now, this film was released in 1987. As I said, directed by Paul Verhoeven. And it was written by Edward Neumeier, who wrote several other great films of the 80s, I believe. But that's aside from the point. This movie starred Ronnie Cox, who really, in the 80s, if you wanted a generic white guy, bad guy villain, Ronnie Cox was your go-to guy. That and Michael Ironside. And he lives up to his douchebag role. Peter Weller as Alex Murphy, the main character of our story, and some other people, but these are the main characters. Oh, and Red Foreman from That 70s Show. That's not his real name. His real name is Kurtwood Smith. But every time I see him in that movie, I say it's Red Foreman. Red Foreman getting his ass kicked by Rose. So let's get started. First, the story, which includes the setting. This movie takes place in the future, around nowish, actually, and Detroit is broke, like it is now. It's run by douchebags who will bow and scrape to large corporations, kind of like how it is now. And these people will basically sell out the city so that their friends can make a buck. In this case, a large multi-corporation that makes everything called OCP. Omni Core something. Here, I think I have it. Omni Consumer Products. OCP. Okay? So basically, I mean, this is the setting. The city is crime-ridden, the jobs have left, and what jobs that are there, you know, shit is getting kind of bad. So, Alex Murphy, cop, transfers from a nicer place to a place that has worse crime because he has a strong sense of justice. He wants to clean up the streets. And on his first day in his new precinct, he gets called in to deal with some robbers at a chemical plant. And things don't go well. His partner is unable to get to him, and he is tortured and then summarily executed. Okay? He gets his arms blown off, legs blown off, and then shot to shit with shotguns and hand pistols. Not a good way to go. But this is only the beginning. Only the beginning. You see, he then is brought back by OCP as the alternative to their previous program that they wanted to use to patrol the streets, called the the Ed 209. The ED 209 was a bad mistake because first of all, it couldn't tell the difference between criminals and civilians, and the programming was janky as shit. As a matter of fact, in the opening sequence, the main right-hand man to the dude who's in charge of OCP in Detroit, basically, he wants the Ed 209 program to go forward, and he brings in the demonstration unit, and it shoots the shit out of the dude who was basically the pretend criminal. And so they go back to the drawing board. A new guy comes in and says, I have something I'm working on that's gonna take the place of this Ed 209. Well, Ronnie Cox doesn't take lightly to that, and shit gets real later on in the story. It's important. So, excuse me. So basically, back to Murphy. He's now been shot to shit. He goes to the hospital and dies. He's clinically dead. But now that he's dead, his body belongs to OCP. And they use him as the template for their Robocop. Okay? They take his body, they take what's left of his body, that they choose to save, some of his digestive system and the like, and they replace the rest of it with machinery. Taking his face and basically stretching it over a mechanical exoskeleton so that he can display emotions. Yeah, some sad shit. So anyway, Murphy is brought back to life, but he doesn't recognize himself as being Murphy. No. He's Robocop. And he proceeds to clean up the streets. In just a few weeks, he just takes down all types of crime. He shoots a rapist in the crotch who's about to rape some lady. You know, he stops bank robbers. I mean, he stops a dude who's trying to hold up the mayor, who's trying to hold hostage the mayor. I mean, really, just cleans up the city. But, meanwhile, parts of his human memories begin to resurface, and he begins to realize that all is not well. Culminating with him figuring out that he is Alex Murphy, but he's deceased, so he doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's having dreams about his family, his wife, his kids. They're his memories, but also his dreams. He has a nightmare where he imagines himself being shot again by Red Foreman and his friends. In the movie, his name is Clarence Boddicker, but we'll call him Red Foreman. Red Foreman. So basically, Robocop goes on a mission to arrest these people who murdered him. And he gets all of them. Finishing off with Red Foreman, who he basically beats the shit out of. I mean, police brutality to the max. Although, I mean, I'll let it slide in this case. So basically, he throws all these dudes in jail. The main bad guy in the story springs them out and basically has them go out and start murdering his adversaries. So the guy who basically created the Robocop program, the little executive that kind of set it forward, played by Miguel Ferrer, he gets killed. And the women he's with get killed. And basically, they lure Robocop into a trap where it's Robocop versus Ed 209. And this is where Robocop's mysterious fourth prime directive gets him in trouble, because he figures out that Ronnie Cox is the main bad guy, but he can't arrest him because his fourth prime directive is he cannot arrest or harm OCP employee. So basically, like, he's fucked, okay? Robocop is fucked, and he's led into an ambush against him versus an Ed 209. Robocop is packing some heat. He's got a pretty damn powerful Magnum semi-automatic handgun, but Ed 209 just tears him up. I mean, fucks up Robocop. Of course, Robocop figures out Ed 209's only real weakness, stairs. That's right, Ed 209 cannot go down stairs. Robocop can, however, because he's based off of the movements of a man. So basically, Robocop manages to escape, get into a car, and, you know, go into hiding while they're hunting him down. As a matter of fact, he winds up going back to the place where he was killed the first time and recalibrating his own systems in order to give him a fighting chance. Ronnie Cox sends his goon squad, including Red Foreman, after him, and Robocop basically kicks ass and takes names, culminating with him basically stabbing Red Foreman in the neck with his data spike, which not only can download and upload data, but is pretty damn handy as a melee weapon. Who knew? So, Robocop eventually goes into the, back to OCP headquarters, basically to arrest Ronnie Cox's character, but he's still caught by that fourth directive until the head man of the OCP Detroit branch basically fires him. And at that point, Robocop shoots his ass out the window. And he dies. Because every good villain has to die ignominiously in an 80s sci-fi movie. And Ronnie Cox is good at it. And that's the story of Robocop. Or is it? See, Robocop is not just a interesting satire looking back at the decadence of the 80s through a sci-fi movie lens. And it's not just a decent sci-fi movie. It's also a retelling of the story of Jesus. Jesus in this case is Alex Murphy. He's tortured, crucified. When he's killed, he's spread out in the crucified position. He has his arm, this hand is shot, this hand is blown off, and his legs are shot up too. Plus they shoot him all over. Finally they shoot him in the chest. And he dies. But he's resurrected as Robo-Jesus. And unlike the Christian Jesus who's all love and turn the other cheek, Robo-Jesus don't believe in that shit. Robo-Jesus just fucks up dudes. Robo-Jesus will throw you through a plate glass window and ultimately stab you in the neck with a data spike. So, ultimately speaking, Robo-Jesus is pretty damn badass. But he can walk on water. Yes, there's a scene in the movie where Robocop walks on water. So yes, Robo-Jesus is pretty damn badass. And so, I mean, this is a great film. It's one of the great sci-fi films of the 80s. It's one of the great sci-fi films of the ages. It's one of the first sci-fi films, sci-fi properties that really was, I mean, it was nitty gritty. It was rated R. It had titties and sex and drugs and blow and people getting shot in the face and in the crotch. I mean, it's just an excellent movie. And how could Paul Verhoeven follow it up? How could he top the excellence of Robocop 1? Well, he did with Robocop 2. Stay tuned for part 2. Okay, we're moving on into the second part of this, but just a little addendum. The second Robocop movie was not directed by Paul Verhoeven. It was directed by Irwin Kershner, but it's still pretty good. So, correction. Let's continue on into the second part of this video, and that is Robocop 2. Now, Robocop 2, as I said, was not directed by Paul Verhoeven, but it is pretty damn good. And basically, it tells the tale of basically how Robocop has started to really clean up the city, but crime never stops. Crime never sleeps. It's never over. In the first movie, it was corporate corruption. In the second movie, it's corporate corruption combined with corporate greed and drugs. A new drug has overtaken Detroit City. Or, as people from there say, Detroit. Detroit, okay? Not Detroit. Detroit, okay? Detroit City, okay? And shit has just gotten bad, okay? This drug is called Nuke. Different colors elicit different emotional reactions. And the kingpin of this whole thing is a dude by the name of Kane. A real asshole drug pusher. Now, OCP is once again trying to increase their share. Robocop has become too successful. But every time they try to make a new version of Robocop, i.e. find some asshole and put him into a machine, it fails. They either commit suicide or they try to kill everyone. And they can't figure out why. So basically, they tried to do it with other police officers and all the rest. And they feel that Robocop has become too independent. So basically, they want to create their own Robocop that they can control. And that leads us to a dude named Kane. Now, Robocop attempts to arrest Kane, but in the process, the dude winds up in a coma and all messed up. And unfortunately, OCP gets their hands onto him and save his brain and his eyes and his spinal cord because they don't need the rest of him. And they put him into a machine. A machine that's a cross between an Ed 209 and anything else. And how do they control this new machine, this Kane war machine? With Nuke. They don't give him Nuke because that's what he wants. They tease him with, well, we'll give you this drug if you do X, Y, or Z. Meanwhile, Robocop is lured into some type of horrific circumstance where he basically has flashbacks to where he doesn't want to kill this kid who's actually a major drug dealer because the kid reminds him of his kid from when he was Alex Murphy. And he's basically caught and immobilized and cut to pieces. They basically in severe pain, just not good. They rebuild Robocop with hundreds of conflicting sub-directives, which basically make him incapable of doing his job effectively. So he basically comes to the conclusion that he's going to have to manually reset himself by exposing himself to massive amounts of electricity, which on the upside might cause him to do a manual hard reset or kill him. But he takes the chance. So basically, he does what he needs to do, and it's time to kick ass and take names, okay? Unfortunately, on the night they're supposed to... Meanwhile, OCP is about to show off their Kane robot that's supposed to take the place of Robocop, and he goes on a rampage, killing people, everything else. And Robocop comes in and saves the day. Fights it in the ceiling, fights it in an elevator shaft. It's one of those epic robot versus robot fights, and you're rooting for Robocop because he's awesome, okay? Ultimately, Robocop wins by getting on this thing's back, ripping out Kane's brain from inside of the machine, and smashing it on the pavement. Now, if you're wondering why this sounds very familiar, this screenplay was written by Frank Miller, who also wrote the comic book for Robocop. So Robocop is one of the rare comic book movies that actually didn't suck. Why? Because the creator was involved with it. So, you know, this Robocop, the second Robocop dealt with the ties between corporate greed and corruption. It wasn't as satirical or dystopian, although that was a part of it, and it was rated R, so it was really kind of dark and nitty and gritty. But it also had, you know, what are the qualities? What makes a man, you know? And so, you know, in this movie we see Robocop basically, you know, deal with what makes him what he is. Why is he still able how is he able to force himself forward? Why hasn't he cracked? And these questions are answered throughout the film. Now, the villains in this particular installment are twofold. You have the manipulative corporate lady who comes up with the idea of this Robocop 2.0, and it fails miserably because they use a psychotic, drug-addicted criminal, Kane, to do it. Then you have the actual machine that has this dude's brain in it, which both, I mean, it's a bad combination. Not bad as in, you know, for the movie. I mean, bad as in for the characters in the movie. It's not a good combination. Anyone could have told these people it was going to fail, but it's a movie. It's movie logic. So, I mean, where do we go after this? You know, where do we go after this? Well, it's pretty simple. After these movies came out, they eventually had Robocop 3, which was a steaming pile of shit. It didn't star Peter Weller, it didn't have the same director, didn't have the same writer, didn't have the same, like, nothing was the same, and it was rated PG-13, which really, like, Robocop is supposed to be a dystopian, hard, gritty, I mean, really, just, I mean, it's not a future you want to live in. You can't really have that future if it's rated PG-13. So, you know, if you really want to see the real sequels to Robocop 2, you have to see Robocop Prime Directives, which were made for TV movies, that basically have, you know, Murphy 20 years later. You know, his life is shit. He's middle-aged. His wife is dead. His son hates him. You know, this is really good. It's nitty. It's rated PG-13, but it's like TV PG-13, so it's like hard and gritty, and the psychological drama, pretty good. You might be able to see them on Netflix if you get a chance, or through other means if you can figure it out. So yeah. That leads me to my final point, which is Robocop, the new Robocop, the Robocop reboot. It's rated PG-13. I don't really have much hope for it. I mean, it's got Samuel L. Jackson in it. I don't think it's gonna help. Samuel L. Jackson can make a lot of movies better, but don't be fucking with my Robocop. Okay, so that's the end of this movies you should have seen. I will try and get another one out next week. It'll probably be either Escape from New York or The Thing. The Thing, yeah. So, wait on it. Those are your choices.